Well, hello there, and welcome to my little arty corner of YouTube. My name's Angela, and I really enjoy drawing. I'd like to say thank you to you for joining me, and just would ask you that if you like the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, and also consider subscribing to my channel. I seem to be releasing content just about every single day, simply because I draw every single day. It's my way of having warm-up art in the morning. So if I'm drawing, I may as well be recording it and whittering on and, you know, doing things like that. As it's still January, it's the 22nd today. It is. I'm taking part in the Fragments of Your Imagination challenge hosted on the 7F5R challenge Facebook group. And today's fragment is, it's either called dewdrop, it can be, depends how you approach adding colour or shadow to it. It can be called shadow and highlight. It can be called dewdrop or gemstone, I think it is. And that doesn't really inspire me. It's not my kind of thing. And, you know, I just end up filling circles in with patterns, really. So what I thought I'd do instead was to have a look at the extra fragments that there are at the end of the challenge. Debbie New and the others at 7F5R Studio added 24 extra fragments. Now, not all of them inspired me at this moment, but a fair number of them did. So I'm going to go through these and I'll draw for you the original fragments and perhaps some of the variations that I particularly like very quickly today. Now, I had a request from somebody asking, what pen am I using? They said my posh pen. It's not really that posh. It's a TWSBI, which is TWSBI Eco Tank pen, which means it has the top part of the pen here holds ink, and it holds a lot of ink, a lot more than a cartridge would. And this little bit at the top twists and turns, so you either push the piston down to empty the tank and then pull it up to fill the tank. Whether you're filling with ink or cleaning it out, you know, that's how it works. And you can actually take it to pieces to clean it. That is not something I plan on doing. In the UK, this cost me, I spent £30 on it, and that was from Cult Pens. And I bought another one. Actually, I bought this one just before that one. My pink one has an extra fine nib on it, which I prefer drawing with. But this purple one has got a fine nib, which is also very nice for drawing. And together I can get thicker and finer lines. But for doing these, I prefer the finer line. So there we go. So there you are. On the ink I'm using, I'll show you. Because I want, you can't use ordinary waterproof ink or India ink in fountain pens, or you can if you wash them out straight away, but it's not recommended. And so I've been looking for inks I can use in there. There are some waterproof permanent inks you can get, but they're not recommended to be left in the pen for more than a couple of days if you're not using it regularly. And some of those are really expensive ones, and part of me thinks if you're going to make an ink that expensive, you could do better. But I found this one. It's called Documentus Ink, and it's made by Rohrer and Klinger. They're a German company. I don't know if you can see that on there. Yeah, you can. And it is a document ink, and it's used for signing official documents, amongst other things. It's fountain pen ink, and it's waterproof, which is exactly what I wanted. So, and it was a fraction of the cost of the more expensive inks, and it works beautifully. You have to remember to cap your pen if you're not using it for more than just a short time, because it will dry, and then you've got to get the nib to work properly and clean the dried off ink off the nib. But it's brilliant. I love it. A lot of my drawings I'm doing are with that pen. Yeah, I swap back and forth and use microns and Unipins and other pens from time to time, but I keep returning to this particular one. And I do find I do have to clean the nib off quite a bit, and that may be a function of the paper I'm working on. It's not to do with the nib itself. It seems to pick up bits of paper, because I think this paper is some mixed media paper from Artwyrd. It's really heavyweight, and it's got an odd texture to the surface, and I think bits come up. It's lovely to draw on, but I have to wipe the nib off fairly regularly. And it seems to be the same for the other mixed media paper that I've been drawing on, which is the Clairefontaine paint on. And all I can go is, it is what it is, and I'm happy to do that. Just keep some kitchen towel, tissue paper, or a soft cloth just to clean it off. So these, I have got 3 pages of these, and each row is a different fragment. And yes, these are all square fragments, and I've stuck to squares. But I know that any of these can be put into other shapes. Squares often translate nicely into things like triangles and more regular shapes, hexagons and so on. But they will also work in a circle, sometimes in a leaf pattern. It's a leaf shape or teardrop shape, or a wibbly wobbly Pangea style shape. Pangea is a reticulum, a grid pattern from Zentangle themselves. So and so I thought, if I'm going to be doing a lot of fragments today, I'll stick with the original shape, and then I'll just see what happens and where they take me. So I'll go with this first one very quickly. We've got quite a few fragments to get through, but I will have good pictures, good images of these on social media, so you can see what they are like. And yet, look at that. Which side shall I use? I think I'll go with this one. Until I put something on there, it really doesn't matter. So if I start with a square, this tangle pattern is essentially a spiral like this. So it goes from one corner of the square, not quite to the other corner. You need a gap there. And then we're going to turn this into a muka. And we're going to repeat that around. So I'm going from that corner to this corner. Put a muka in, complete the stem. This corner towards the side and complete the muka. And finally back to this corner. Now I believe I've actually done something very similar. Well, I know I've done something similar on an earlier tangle. And I think the original the fragment in the challenge, I think, has a lot of sections like this that are black. I most probably won't colour all the black bits in, because I've got a lot of fragments to share today. And I think I was saying that I'll get decent images of all of these pages full of fragments and pop them up on my social media for you to see as well, if that's what you would like to do. So we have this is the original fragment. I don't think I've actually got that anywhere. So if we have a look at that, and perhaps I can talk you through what I've done here. With these, I've turned the mukas just into spirals, and I haven't bothered adding the stem in. I've just left them as they are and put a single one there. Here, I haven't even put the spiral bit in. I've just started to create the spiral and let it stop. I like this. That's muka on its own, which works quite nicely. And instead of popping a curvy edged squarey shape in there, I've popped like a gem, so it's like a jewellery fitting for a precious stone. This is essentially this one, some reason I've drawn that again. Oh, I know why. Because these have quite a curve here, and this I made them much straighter, so they are not quite a pointy corner here, but we're getting close to it. And with this one, I actually connected these, so this came down to the corner and then started up, so that's nice. I've seen this somewhere before. That may be a fragment in the Zentangle primer. And this one is taking this kind of one with the spirals there, but doing it in the same way as here, is connecting them right at the corners, so they go that way. So not that many variations for me, but enough. Oh, look at that, you can't even see it, I'm so sorry. Yeah, so this one, more square. This one, these parts are going right to the corners, and here I've used spirals instead of this kind of shape, and again taking them right from the edge to the corner, so they overlap like that. So not so many variations for that one, but it's all a start. And you know me, most of my variations come with looking at other shapes perhaps and other things. The next fragment is this one, which has so many possibilities. It reminds me so much of medieval tiles. It really, really does in some ways. And I knew I'd have fun playing with this one. And in some ways, as I'm talking now, perhaps I should have picked that one to run with, but I was determined to do loads of these fragments. So I'm just hoping the rest of the fragments for the rest of the challenge will be ones that I like. Otherwise, I'll just be, well, I can always go back to this one. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pop almost like, well, curvy V shapes in the corners. About the same size is what you're looking for. Now, you might have noticed that along my line of these variations, I've got pencil lines in, because I find pencil lines really help me to construct things well. Then I'm going to pop a teardrop shape like that on, and then two more or less horizontal. If they're not quite horizontal, it won't matter too much. And then in the middle here, we're going to just pop one of these shapes. And in the original, or the fragments that was on the challenge instructions, these areas were black, as was the middle of that, just to add some contrast. But again, if I show you these, pop this one next door, you can see that we've got a lot of not autofocusing going on. Let's have a look. I'm not staying autofocused or having autofocus lock on. Yeah, locked focus. So that's that one. This one, instead of auraing that triangle, I just put the triangle in and had lines radiating out from the point, and I just put a single teardrop there and a bead. This is not quite as wide V shapes here, they're quite narrow, but with that line there, but I just popped a circle, an orb or a bead on the end. This one I used leaf shapes instead of this in the corner, and then I added those kinds of shapes again. You might be able to see I popped some pencil construction lines in, so diagonals, and here I drew a square within them, and then these leaves, the outside leaves run along the edges of that square, and it helps to place that inner one there. It helps to keep things, for me, more regularly organised, organised, spread out the patterns, less wibbly and wobbly. There's a place for wibbly and wobbly, but never when I want something that's vaguely symmetrical. So this one, instead of triangles, I put semicircles here, and I used little hearts as those little ornaments on the ends and the tops. I put a bead at the top of the heart, and then I put that shape, actually connecting those beads instead of having it in the corner, it will work either way. Another variation, this time I made that central part quite large, ordered it, and then popped a flower inside it. This one I rather like. So instead of popping these shapes in the, I'm pointing with my pen, and I'm conscious my nib's going to dry up. I pop them on the sides, and that gives a different kind of feel, and I quite like that. I really like this one because it's holding this, all these little leaflet shapes, or whatever you want to call them at the top, are holding this orb in place. It looks a bit like a fried egg actually, but that's nice. And again, I did use pencil construction lines, and that's fine. This one I think is possibly just about my favourite here. I didn't pay attention to this edge, but it's these ones in the corner. I just think I like these kinds of botanical, sort of like embellishments or features, motifs there. And I think there's a lot of mileage in using those. And this is a simpler version with smaller spirals on there and a different shape, where I use those beads at the top of these spiral shapes, these mukas, these very straight regimented mukas, to aura around in a semicircle shape to get that shape there, which I rather like. So that was a very fruitful one, and I knew I could have run with it and filled a page. And I know that a lot of these will work in triangles or in other shapes as well. In a circle they'd work. Not so sure about leaf shapes or teardrops and things like teardrops, possibly, because it depends how you organise these shapes around the teardrop. But yeah, so I really enjoyed that. The next shape is sort of like a present. That's how I looked at it. And I did start by drawing in the lines. So I had that as a guide, and I did that with all of them. So the basic one was, I think it was something like this. I think it had a square in the middle, but it doesn't matter. And then what I did was, instead of having just a straight edge, I wanted it to curve out outside the edge of the shapes, outside the main edges. So I did it like that. Excuse me. And I've just thought of something else that I could do, which could be a fruitful kind of thing with this. Again, I'm going to pop these roughly where I did on that one. So instead of going out this way, let's have some notches going in like this. Quite sure if this is anything fruitful. It just came to me then. I thought, let's have a look at it and see how it works. So you have these side to side, or this in a grid pattern, you're going to get some interesting shapes where these meet. I'm just going to perhaps pop just a little semicircle in there just to fill that gap in, so that could work. I'm going to pop that there. So that's something, and I'm glad I popped that in because that's something for me to work with. With that one, I have put patterns, simple patterns in the bands. That's quite an ornate, almost like buckle or bow. This one, I've added shadow to look like what's underneath, almost like we're looking through them. But if you're going to use colour, if you did this in one colour, this, you know, this and another colour, you could actually get that feeling that one of them's going over the other, and then a different colour for the background. Just putting it out there. Or you could have it almost like they come out from that, or a single one. It looks like a belt. You could just do a single one across. This one I just split those bands up in the middle, so there's endless possibilities for doing that. That's quite cute with the little, you know, very long Y's on there. This one is kind of I suppose aeronautic, where you overlap, or not, oh, no, it's rush, isn't it, where you overlap the shapes, they look like they're woven. And this one's betweed, and they're just a completely different shape, you know, leaf shape. What's the thing? Okay, next one I did was this one here. So I'll draw a square, and it is from the corner, not quite to the corner, and I made that one right to the corner, but it's, you have a longer edge on the first side I drew, kind of. So it looks pretty much like this, but in a different kind of construction. What I found was interesting with this one is I tried cutting little bits out to change the shape. This one is quite fun, where I use a very thin version of this and then just create smaller versions of it, ordering it out. I had to do one with Perkins somewhere. And then things got interesting here. I didn't pick this out, that I had a shape over a shape, until I popped this in behind, and suddenly I saw that. So that is just doing one shape on each side, and I did aura to give me that feeling I've got a proper border there. And like this one, I coloured these in just plain black to see what would happen. I used a more curvy kind of form here, and I put tipple in there, those tiny little circles, but I did use chalk pastel there to darken that, to help that feeling that this is further away, this is underneath, and this lies over. And again with this one, just different shapes, these sort of like V shapes. So I found that quite interesting, and there's a lot I think could be done there, but I wasn't prepared to spend, again, to go off tack on it. And if this kind of idea applies to other shapes as well. And then I think this is the last square one I did, I could be wrong, is its basic one is you draw a square within, and you connect the squares by their corners. Adding shadow makes a whole host of difference. So here I've shadowed the outer edges of the left and bottom, and then I've added shadow to the inner square at the top and the left, top and the right. You know, you can see what I've done, I've reversed it. So it looks like this is curving upwards and this is shadowed underneath here. This one I just popped shadow underneath that inner square, the bottom and on the right of it. And this one I just put shadow on the inside square. Having different numbers of nested squares and where you put the connecting lines is interesting. So I've got two together there, and then I put a square inside, and then the next square I popped at 90 degrees. This one I drew that 90 degree square in before I did the inner square as it was. That is, I have seen that as a pattern, don't ask me what it's called though. And I tried making this sort of like a wonky square and twisting it at an angle and still joining the corners together, and it just doesn't seem to compute in my head. So that was quite fun. Okay, next page. Oh, not that page. There we are. The next loads of fragments I did were circular ones. So the first one, it's one of those ones where you think, what am I doing here? And I think the way I approached it, I worked out approaching it was to put a series of broken auras in. And I made mine quite irregular in size. I put a circle in the middle and I connected them all back there, so I got wedges. Like this. Then I auraed and popped some lines in there. This one, and I broke the lines to give a bit of sparkle there. This one, instead of having the lines radiating from the centre to the outer edge, I put them in as if we had broken circles behind. That would be fun to add shadow to, actually, because it really would help in giving a feeling that we've got something lying underneath. So what I'm doing here is thinking about where I think the shadow might be, and just adding that shadow in. So that pushes those lines to the background. This one is a bit like a lily pad, because I thought, well, if we've got lots of little bits, if I do it as one, it's going to be like a lily pad. Here I've added shadow as if it's doming upwards. Here I've tried to add shadow so it looks like it's a cone shape, like a funnel of some kind. And then just played with that idea. Having two of them is quite nice. So three of them looks like a bit like a radiation symbol. The next one I did was this one, except I didn't draw it sort of like the way that it was in the example. You put 3 lines in and then you draw a shape like that. And in this case it is a question of adding lines like this. It ends up feeling rather awkward the way the lines bend around the shape, which is why I chose to do things in a different way. So here I did these, but I just popped a circle in the middle rather than just keeping the line. And instead of having these radiating lines, I had these aura shapes to give these kinds of furl shapes. Here, instead of having simple leaves, I put ivy leaves, other leaves, leaves and bands, a ginkgo kind of leaf, I suppose. That was fun because I put the ovals in and then put a couple of, I put the next layer of circle in, or the circle there. Then I put these smaller shapes in and then added another circle. And that was quite fun to do. That one's done in a vaguely similar kind of way, except I put little beads above the petals to connect them to the outside ring. And I went on to another line where I did different shapes. I used sort of diamond shapes and heart shapes. And if I'd wanted them spread out evenly, I'd have just popped in those these lines here, but use a pencil so I can erase them. So the next circular one I didn't do all the circular ones. Some of them I've already done, or they've appeared in variations I've done, and some of them just did not appeal to me. So this one is you start with a circle, you draw a rice shape. You need to do 4 rice shapes with roughly equal gaps between them. And then just this shape. And then all of these, or most of these, are variations on the theme. It's just varying how many of the rice shapes. So here I've got 3 instead of 4. I've even done one over here, if you can't see, sorry. Okay, so it's mostly varying how many rice shapes I've got, sort of. So I start with 4, I try a 3. That reminds me of another fragment. I'm not sure if I've done something like that already or whether I've seen it somewhere else. This one reminds me of another fragment, but instead of having rice shapes, it's square shapes, you know, corners. This one, instead of auraing the shape like I've done here, like with this one, I put a little circle in the middle there. With this one, I put lots of concentric lines underneath these little bits on the outside edge, and here just a couple of them. This one I put a square in because I used 4 of the rice shapes, and adding shadow just pushes that to the back. So it's like we're looking into a ball almost. I could do with some shadow around the edges perhaps, just to give that sense of curvature again, like I did with this one. And there's that one there. The next fragment I did was this one. And I did have a bit of trouble in some ways drawing this, just a bit. And I think it's because I didn't get the shape right perhaps the first time. So you draw these 2 shapes in. They're kind of like one of these furled shapes. Where have I got those? I've got those somewhere. You know, sort of like the V shapes, except that's where I'm going wrong, because I'm coming back on mine. So they're sort of like more like an L shape with a curved ends, where one end curves out and the other one curves back on itself, as it were. And then here you do a smaller version of those, and just get a bead in there. And if you draw one big enough, you can just do layers on layers. So that's quite interesting. I did try different shapes, as you can see. So I used these kinds of shapes, that kind of V shape. I didn't offset them, I had those opposite each other. But it's something that, again, it's one that will need to sit with my head for a while until I can work out perhaps what I can do with it. And then the last lot I did were triangles. I think I did leave a couple of the triangle fragments out in the extras, again because they didn't appeal to me. They're unlikely to be fragments I'd ever use. So the first triangle, split it in half. I'm just going to put dots there about halfway along, halfway between the outer edge and this splitting line, and about the same height up, and just draw triangles in, and then lines that connect there. It gets very crystalline in nature. It's a very geometric kind of structure, and I did lots of variations. I split this one up with 4 sections, so I have 4 sections there. So if I hide that bit, you can see that it's that. And then I thought, oh, if I pop these on underneath, it looks a bit like a diamond. I'll show you what I mean, how I did that. So how I did it, split it in half, split these 2 in half. Then I want these about the same distance, my little dots part way up, so I can get those diamonds in, or not diamonds, there's triangles in, get these shapes going, and then I drew this in and just mirrored these zigzags here. I get a diamond. And I just thought that was a really interesting thing that I just saw. Small narrow space, triangular space. There we go. An interesting shape. So that's a couple of those. So they're all variations. This one here though, I varied how wide they were to get different sort of like patterns. So I had a narrow one and a wider one here. Big one in the middle, two narrow ones on either side. Two big ones on the outside, a narrow one on the middle. I haven't done a very good job of making that a very, very clear and different kind of size. Here I used circular shapes instead of the circles. And I did put those lines in there. I'm not quite sure if that works. I think it might have been better if I'd popped them closer to these ones, the lower ones, or perhaps thicken those. I'm doing that now and I'm thinking, oh, what am I doing? I'm making a mess. But it's fine. It is what it is. It's a sketchbook page. Okay, next fragment was this one. And it's quite interesting because I will pop a vertical line in because it is about drawing two triangles inside like that, the corners of squares. I think the one in the guide to the challenge was like this. I could be wrong. So it's interesting, and it's interesting how you add shadow and other bits to it. I did alter those shapes, and I will pop in that centre line and perhaps pop that in. So I also did shapes like this, which give plenty of space beneath to add something else in. So I thought that would be quite nice. And this one here is kind of like that. So this one here I popped a circle underneath, and this one I used semicircles here instead of these shapes. This one I thought, right, well, let's try with 3, and that worked quite interestingly as well. This next one is interesting, and I got quite a few variants there, but let's have a look at how I constructed this one. I'll go on to another line here. So what I did was I popped a triangular arrangement of dots, and then we're going to do this like, is it cadent, where it's S shapes joining them. Like this, so we get that lovely shape there. And then we have another S shape that will go to the corners then, to hold that shape in place. So that was fun. I did some different kinds of things. Yeah, I'll go back here, you can see they're all basically the same. I just varied the size of this. This one's big enough that I could put something in the middle of it. This one I made the dots bigger and attached them to the outer edge, and that looks like crazy cadent. This was quite nice, sort of like plenty of space. Instead of having the dots halfway along the sides, I popped the dots at the corners, you know, so the triangle, it's sort of like it's a smaller version of the outer triangle. It forms that kind of shape. This one's an upside down one again, but with a square triangle, and then trying these S-shaped connectors. Teeny tiny one. And again, that square one. I think I was trying to work out something with these and I just didn't quite manage it. Don't know what it was going through my head. Again, this would work in other shapes. And I think that's where I would have gone. I think it would have... I think my mind is telling me this would have more mileage in a different shape. But I wasn't going to go to a different shape today. So that was fun. This one is very similar to the square one that we looked at, you know, similar to this in many ways. But you know, with this one, it's sort of like putting those shapes in and so on. But I'll draw it because I can. So for this one, still on squares, and you pop a square in the middle and then borrow those squares, and you get this here. You can pop a little seed in the middle. It's Tripoli style, I think that is, or fill it all in black. I tried some other things because you know me. Let's stick with this original idea and let's go and have these so that we have a long sweep up to the thicker part. So it adds that swirling kind of feeling to that shape in the middle. And I also did a well variation. So that's where you have a circle in the middle, and we're going to create number 6s. Well, I am coming off all of them. But I did others. So with this one, I just very simply popped that triangle inside, put circles in the corner, joined them up with a line, and then just created a tiny triangle in the middle. This one I offset that central, that inner triangle. So I got 4 triangles. One I popped the well shape in, the other one I just auraed with little triangles. This one I did without any auraing, but I think this would look great like this. I think it would look even more fab if these were coloured in black, because it would really help lift that central motif up. This is another variant of that. This one was using that Y shape and just putting like little seeds in the middle. It looks almost like strange petals. Could just round the corners a bit to give that kind of shape, and add a bit there. This is a much bigger variation on this. This one, I put a tiny triangle in the middle. So do it on a big scale. So a tiny triangle in the middle. I then popped semicircles, a bit like crescent moon there, and then I connected those out to the edge. And perhaps just a little one there. So that's quite sweet. And the very last fragment I did was something that's really, really an unusual one. I haven't come across this before, to my knowledge. And I can see that this has got a lot of potential for putting together in lots of different ways. It's a line. So you draw the straight line in there, and then you complete that to create a triangle. This distance here needs to be about this distance here, but I haven't done it there, but I will do it here. I could make half a triangle, so it looks like it's half an arrow, more like half an arrow, like that. make that section really big. And even perhaps pop even a completely different shape on the end, which doesn't feel quite right, but you know, it is possible. I'm just going to shape that in. So variations, I actually rotated this around. So I put the lines in, leaving a similar gap, and then just capped them with triangles. This one, I did one going this way and one further along going that way. That idea actually led to that. This is making them so they fit together in the middle. It's a bit finicky, and don't ask me how I managed to do it because I can't describe it. I can show you, possibly. I know how I did it. Let me draw the triangle in. And then what I did was, I think I drew a triangle in like this. And I think I drew a second triangle in. Some strange, oh, I know what I did, yeah. I say for some strange reason, I know exactly what I did. I put a tiny one in there actually. And oops. You have to be a bit more careful than I have. And then you take these towards the middle. I forgot to leave. That's what one of those triangles was for, was to make sure I left enough space between each of these parts. But you end up with them close to the middle. I also, instead of having them, these bits going inwards, I had them going outwards, which was interesting. I actually auraed that line, and I think these would look better perhaps if I created a straighter edge there, perhaps. So that was an interesting variation. And here it was just a matter of auraing. This one, there's the original shape to this triangle, and then I just put these stripes in. It reminds me of a logo, mind you, but I don't know which logo it is. So there's a few there. So I've had a busy morning. Because it's now after midday, but I have had a busy morning, a pleasant morning with this. And I know if I'd done this all on camera, it would have taken me a good couple of hours. And just going through this and just showing you the fragments I used and talking through how I did some of these has taken nearly 50 minutes. So I'm going to leave that there. And what I'm going to say is that, yeah, I'll just leave all of that there because I'll use that as my my picture for my video, you know, whatever it is. And I will get good pictures of this up and on social media of each of these later on today. First get the video sorted. So I'm just going to say thank you very much. I hope you found this interesting. And that it's giving you plenty of ideas and inspiration for trying things for yourself. So take care of yourselves, enjoy whatever part of your day you have left and every day, and please find time to be creative. And I'll just say once again, thank you for all the likes, subscribes, comments, everything else. Take care for now. Bye bye. Well.